Happy Saturday, everybody. It's your two old bloggers, me, Dave, and Darren over there. We've been commenting on your Minnesota Vikings publicly for over 2 decades apiece. That's why we get our name. We're old timers. What do we want? We want to see Super Bowl win before we die. Everybody hears that? Well, the Vikings may have taken steps to do just that. What am I talking about? Well, they found their man. They finally closed the deal on a defensive coordinator. It's the one I wanted straight from the get-go. It's probably the best one. But did they make it easy on us? Of course they didn't. We went through all sorts of heart palpitations and worrying that everybody was going to be lost to some other team. So, in the end, it turned out pretty good. But how is Brian Flores, that man, going to turn around the 31st ranked defense? Good question. We'll talk about it. Then we're going to talk about, in our State of the Viking series, we're moving on to my favorite section, the O-line, the big round bellies. What is the situation there? We have Brian O'Neill, who's coming off an injury. Will he be ready? We have center and Garrett Bradbury, who's an unrestricted free agent. Will he be gone? Will the young guy, Ed Ingram, improve to be better than he was? Does the rest of the line continue to improve under Coach Kuper? Let's hope so. We'll find out. And also, last but not least, we ask the question, what is the future of Adam Thielen? Does the great Minnesota story continue with the Vikings, or will he be somewhere else in 2023? Next on Two Old Bloggers. Climb in the Pocket, Daily Norseman, and Lake Monster Brewing presents Two Old Bloggers. Starting now. Hey everybody, it's Dave here, Darren over there. We're your two old bloggers. Darren, how are things in the great white north?
Pretty good, Dave. Just waiting on Super Bowl tomorrow, and we not one of our themes for this week's show, but want to congratulate Justin Jefferson, NFL Offensive Player of the Year. We talked about that a couple of weeks ago. I don't really have too much more to say about it. The guy's awesome, but hopefully this is the first of multiple NFL Offensive Player of the Year awards that JJ's going to win in a Viking uniform.
I hope so too, and hopefully eventually he wins the MVP and it no longer becomes a quarterback-only award. He was a finalist, but we all know everybody loves their quarterbacks. Well,
yeah, we knew Mahomes was getting it or Jalen Hurts was getting it,
yep.
And that's just the way it goes.
And we'll see them tomorrow and see which one of those two shines. So, hopefully both of them do.
Yeah.
Let's start this show. We wanted to start off with, we named it the State of the O-Line, and the DC search is over. That is where we are going with this, and we are going to start right now with theme 1. We got our man. Can Brian Flores turn the defense around?
It was pretty hairy there last week, Dave. Our last
Mhm.
show, we were talking about Ijero Evero. Hey, he's not coming back to Denver. He's agreed. It looks like he's going to get interviewed for the defensive coordinator job in Minnesota. Oh, good news! That means we could have either him potentially or Flores. Then he drops out, takes the Carolina defensive coordinator job. Um, and then we're down to Mike Pettin and Flores, but Flores is still a candidate for the Cardinals job. You know what you were thinking? You know what I was thinking? It was like, we're going to end up with Pettin,
Every
guaranteed.
Vikings fan was thinking that. Yes.
But then Flores decides, I don't want the Cardinals job. I'm coming to Minnesota as the defensive coordinator. Hallelujah. Great hire, the right hire. I think, David, you already mentioned it. He was your number one guy
He
from the
was.
get go. So you were as happy as anything with me. Again, he was like 1A or Avero would be 1B. But either or, I would have been pleased with. But we got Flores, and bang, again, great hire, I think, and very happy that we don't have Mike Pettin as the defensive coordinator. But
You and me both. He could sit there and advise from on high and
yes,
hopefully not screw shit up too badly.
yeah. Sure, we can provide his advice, but I'm sure Flores will take that under consideration. But Flores, being the personality is, the defense, he's going to do it like Frank Sinatra. It's going to be my way, his way. And I think his way, Dave, is going to be. It's pretty clear that the Vikings defense in 2023, is going to look a lot different, than it did under Ed Donatel. And I think that the big thing is that when he became pressure is the big thing at Miami. Even though he wasn't the defensive coordinator in Miami, his last 2 years they blitzed basically 40% of the time, which is a ton. The Vikings under Ed Donatel last year blitzed just under 19% of the time. So we're going to see a lot of blitzing. When he was in Miami as the head coach, at his introductory press conference, he hasn't had an introductory press conference with the Vikings, I don't think, at this point. So we haven't really got to hear what his vision for the Vikings defense is at this point. I'll be really interested to hear that when he does get put in front of the media and has his media availability. But in Miami, when he was head coach, he talked about the importance of being multiple, giving multiple looks for your defense. Kind of like what Kevin O'Connell said last year offensively about the importance of having multiple looks offensively. So Flores likes to mix it up. He also talked about back then about how every game you got to approach, have a different defensive game plan, because every offense is different. They got different players that do different things well. And so you can't just always run the same stuff every week and expect to be effective. So those things are those things are going to be things that, if that proves to be how Flores runs things in Minnesota, Viking fans, I think, are going to be pretty happy with that approach. Howdy, GMAC, and howdy everybody else that's on here. So hearing really like like the hire, like what I think Flores is going to bring. One of the key things, Dave, and you can chime in here and talk about
Mhm.
lots of stuff too, but with his blitz pressures, one of the things that Flores is noted for is that you never know where the pressure is going to come from. Could be a safety, could be a corner, could be linebackers, could be your lineman. But what he likes to create a lot of confusion pre-snap and even post-snap, and he'll come at his pressures and his blitzes from different guys, not what the quarterback is expecting. So he's going to create a lot of for opposing quarterbacks. He likes to create confusion amongst them, and confusion is something that Ed Donatel's defense did not create for opposing quarterbacks last year.
No.
They were rarely confused with what we were doing. They seemed to know what we were doing before we even did it, and so the confusion, that's great. I think that he's and what's also good about his defenses is, in the videos I've watched, is that by creating that confusion, he also likes to choke off what the quarterback thinks is going to be their read or their hot
Mhm.
read to get rid of the ball where somebody's going to be open for that pressure. He likes to choke off those openings with interesting coverages. So
Mhm.
just creates a lot of uncertainty, puts the quarterback under a lot of mental stress, and the offensive line, because they got to call, pass protection and that sort of thing. I think that this is going to be a welcome change for the Vikings defense
Mhm.
in
Um,
2023.
Todd saying that graphics of Tomlin, it very well may be. However, when I ripped it off the internet, it said Flores. But anyways, no, I agree wholeheartedly. I think all right, one thing that Mike Zimmer was good at was making blitz packages and disguising, who was doing what. Well, they're bringing the linebackers up into the A gaps, bringing Harrison Smith up, doing corner blitzes, whatever. He did that mind game with opposing quarterbacks. Aaron Rodgers is one of the best that has commented on how always playing Mike Zimmer's defense was a chess match, right? And Harry was the key to that. He tried to figure out what was going on the way Hitman was lined up, and he so many times got that screwed up. Well, I think that we're going to get the same sort of, not the exact same, but the same sort of thing with Flores. He wants to build his defense that when a quarterback comes up, just like KOC does on the offense, that they're going to see, a lineup that looks the same, but nothing works the same as the previous time they saw it. They want it different. They want to get into the quarterback's head, and he does play usually one safety back, one safety up. And that perfect safety for that is Harrison Smith. He's the one that just absolutely rocked at that. And it messes with the quarterback's mind because they don't know who's coming. It messes with the center's mind because they're going to sit there. Well, is this linebacker to Mike? Is that linebacker to Mike? Do we need to call the blocking to the left side or to the right side? And the more you do that, the more successful you could be because you confuse them. They make the wrong calls. Bam, sack, right? Sack is a negative play. Defense loves sacks. Getting negative plays helps the Vikings. It helps their defense and it helps their offense because it is a negative play. You're pushing the opponent back. It is something to go for. He also emphasizes turnovers and generating turnovers, whether it be through defensive back play and getting interceptions or swarming and hitting the ball and getting fumbles. Somebody that emphasizes turnovers can generate a ton of them. And if I remember correctly, he led the league in one or two of the years he was at Miami in generating turnovers. That, again, helps the Vikings. It helps both the offense and the defense because it gives the ball back to the offense, and it's usually in better field position than especially what we saw with Donatel, where it's march. Yeah. All right, let's hold up in the red zone, right? Well, your field position for the offense after that is crappy. You want to be able to get that earlier. So if you can do that, that helps the offense. The offense has more of a chance to score because it's already proven. You can think of it it's a logical deal. The closer you are to scoring, the more likelihood you are to score, right? If you're starting back on your own 10 and you got to go 90 yards, that's tougher than starting on the opponent's 30 or 45 and having to only go that distance. That's the way he runs his defense. That, and the final thing is he learned under Bill Belichick. We've talked about this. And Bill Belichick was a master of optimizing the players he had and scheming around that. He
do
has
your
shown,
job.
Yes, do your job. He has shown that in Miami. He helped with it in Pittsburgh last year. And as GMAC says, this is exactly what we need for our defense. And I think by far, he was my number one favorite because of the experience. He's been through all that. Being a head coach is going to help KOC. He's got that whole deal going with him. But the whole philosophy on how he runs, he'll take chances. We'll get burned a couple plays. You got to remember that he's going to have corners playing aggressive. They may get burned on one or two plays, and it may cost us a score. But overall, when all that starts to kick in, it becomes advantage the Vikings. It becomes an advantage mentally against your enemy, and it becomes an advantage because more likely than not, they're turning that into turnovers and great plays and negative plays for the opposing offense. And that's the way defense can play complementary football with a high-powered offense. You do both, there's no stopping you. And I think this is a fantastic hire. But the question is, how quickly can they get it done?
Yeah, Dave. Like you were talking about, Flores is a guy that one thing he wants to dictate to the offense and not be dictated to. And again, I think that that's going to, as long as it works well, Viking fans are really going to like that. But how quickly can he get it done? Well, he still needs the players.
Right.
like Mike Zimmer, you mentioned. Mike Zimmer was great at coming up with blitz packages when he blitz, inventive, confuse the offensive line, confuse the quarterback. But he did that, and even in 2021, when we got quite a few sacks as a team, even 2021, 2020 under Mike Zimmer, running those inventive blitz packages, the Vikings defense was still crappy. So you need players. The Vikings have some good players on the defense right now. Daniil Hunter being one of them, Zadarius Smith, if they keep him being another, but they need a lot more. And so that's going to be part of Flores' job too. I think he's going to be heavily involved in both draft wise, who are we drafting defensively in April, and also in who do we keep on defense this year that we already have under contract, or who is a potential free agent, somebody like Dalvin Tomlinson. Does he stay or does he go? Flores is going to have a large like input in that because it's his defense now, and he's going to want the guys that he thinks best suited. But
Why did I
and then there's
in?
the free agent. I don't know. It looks like outer space or something.
It's fairy dust.
Right, because because Flores can't. He just can't spray fairy dust and make our defense great. Yes, a coach can only do so much as good as you are, and you need players. And so draft, free agency, who we're going to retain, who we're going to let go. Flores is going to have a big impact in that. And if he is making the right decisions, or his input is and what he's looking for in players, if Kwesi listens to that and is able to go out and get those players, that's also going to determine, along with Flores' coaching acumen, that's going to determine how much better the Vikings defense is in 2023 compared to 2022. I think we're expecting there'll be several changes in the Vikings defense. People are going to connect the dots now, David, and say, okay, well, who are the free agents in Pittsburgh? Who are the free agents in Miami that he'll be looking to bring in there? There are several of them. Olandon Roberts, the linebacker with Miami. Nick Needham, the cornerback who's coming off a pretty serious knee injury, is a free agent with Miami. A guy to watch, Chris Wormley is on the edge defensive edge guy for Pittsburgh. He's a free agent, not a starter, but he's been there a while. He would have worked under Flores this year in Pittsburgh. Guy I think to watch out for, because the Vikings certainly we're going to be looking for cornerback depth and a veteran cornerback, because I think with Flores coming in as a defensive coordinator, going to be running a lot of blitz packages, going to be expecting his going to be putting his team in a lot of man coverage. I think this means Patrick Peterson is not going to come back to the Vikings, because this defensive scheme does not suit Patrick Peterson's skills at this point in his career. He's talked about how he really liked Donatell's system. He had a very good year last year, playing in a lot of zone with his eyes on the quarterback all the time. Man coverage, I don't think that's Patrick Peterson's game anymore. And I don't think Flores is going to think that Patrick Peterson is a good fit for this defense in 2023. So I think with a guy to watch out for as a potential free agent is Cam Sutton, the cornerback with Pittsburgh. If he gets to free agency, if Pittsburgh doesn't re-sign him, he'll be 28 at the end of this month. He had a pretty good year last year with the Steelers. He's not one of the top tier free agent cornerbacks, in my opinion. So the Vikings, who have some cap issues, might be able to
get
afford
a
him.
relatively
Yeah,
inexpensive free agent
yeah.
quarterback.
For a cornerback in free agency, they might be able to get something, reasonable, whatever you consider reasonable to be. But he'd be a guy that I think that would be would be of interest to Flores and to the Vikings with this new defensive scheme that we're expecting, or philosophy that we're expecting to see out of Brian Flores.
Well, you might also want to look at Patriots players because
Yes.
even though they may have been not directly under Flores back when he was there, they come under the same basic philosophy that he teaches under Belichick, and they might be good fits as well. So that's another spot to look for possible connections when we get into free agency, which starts.
In
Legal
about
tampering is the March
early
13th,
March.
and then the 15th starts it, if I remember correctly on the dates. So be prepared that you might see something from there. That won't be shocking. If he pulls somebody off of the Rams, that may be shocking on a Flores point of view. That may not be on a KOC point of view, but say he picks somebody off the Browns. Pick your team.
Yeah.
But the ones that are connected are obviously the Dolphins, the Steelers, and I would say the Patriots.
The Patriots. Now, last year when KOC became the head coach, we got to remember there was lots of speculation about which Rams he was going to bring to the Vikings, particularly on offense. Well, the only Ram that ended up signing with us was Johnny Munt. So,
Mm-hmm.
don't
Overest,
oversell
yeah.
this whole thing about how, oh well, he was a head coach in Miami, he was a linebackers coach in Pittsburgh. Look at all, just zero in on those free agents on those two teams in New England too, and those are going to be the guys we're going to target. Not necessarily, but
Right.
it makes sense that a few of those guys will be of interest. Do we have the money to sign them? Are they interested in signing here? Can Flores? How interested is Flores in any of those free agents? We don't know any of those things, but we're going to find out in short order. And again, just excited about this hire, what it can mean for the Vikings defense in 2023. And Dave, there's an old Canadian band. They had a big hit here in the late '70s called Trooper. They had a song
Okay.
called "We're Here for a Good Time, Not a Long Time,"
Yeah.
and I think that that's what that's what the Brian Flores is going to be
Well,
in Minnesota
yeah.
because he's got head coaching
Aspirations. He was.
aspirations, and if I don't think he's going to if I think he'll be here 2 years max, and
Well,
that'll
and
be a
we
good
want
thing
the 2
because
years because then we get the third round picks. If it's 1 year, uh, it's we don't get the picks, but it's not that bad because it would have meant the defense got that much better in a hurry. So
yeah,
yeah, I hope
but if
it's
he's
two. I saw a couple questions fly by. I don't remember who said it, but wondering if we'll ever see what he gets paid. I strongly doubt that, but I bet it's pretty good for a defensive coordinator. And then Purple Haze talk about Peterson should retire and become a coach. I love the fact, Purple Haze, that P2 sits with all those corners and goes through all that film and mentors them, brings them over and tells them this is how you be a professional. One that's obviously going into the Hall of Fame because Pat P is going into the Hall of Fame in the future. I love that idea. Don't expect it anytime soon, however, unfortunately. But if the Vikings did re-sign Pat P, I see him in that mentorship role more than hopefully a starting role, because hopefully we have starters that are young, fast, aggressive, and just literally outplay him for that spot in this style of defense.
I think Dan Henneman mentioned. I think it was Dan in the comments talking about how we need to groom a young guy on us, get a young guy to groom for Flores because again we don't expect he'll be here very long, and
And
actually, so somebody take over for Flores after he leaves, either after 2023 or 2024. And again, I actually hope that happens because that will mean more than likely that the Vikings defense was really, really good while Flores was here, and that's what we want.
we want to continue that. Mm-hmm.
Yes, that's right.
No, I
But
agree wholeheartedly. Great suggestion, Dan. Great suggestion. that brings us to the end of theme 1, which brings us to That's Badass Wood Art. Our buddy Lewis always says you can get 20% off using CT Pocket as your promo code off any individual piece. He works hard at it. This week he came out with something simple. It's a Norseman outline with a bottle cap opener on it. See, this would look good on my liquor cabinet that I have on the side of it. Just when I'm in the mood for beer, it's right there. Perfect in your man den. All you got to do is pick out the color and what you want. It is great, and like I said, you can get it for 20% off with the promo code CT Pocket.
Wonder if he's doing up a piece with Brian Flores here this week.
That's a good question. We'll have to ask him. That brings us on to a theme 2. My favorite topic, the O-line.
Sure is, Dave. This is our second run at taking a look at the Vikings positional units. Last week we looked at running backs, and this week we're looking at the offensive line, the big round bellies, David Stefano's passion in life, in football, other than the Minnesota Vikings, is talking about the offensive line. So he'll have lots of big, I'm sure he'll have lots of opinions on this one, but just we're going to go over how the Vikings are looking on the offensive line heading into the 2023 season, and what changes there might be with the offensive line. And actually, I think, Dave, that that the offensive line actually is probably one of the most set and positional units we have on the Vikings right now, because pretty much 4 of the 5 starting positions are set right now. Christian Darrisaw, look it up there. He's your left tackle. Brian O'Neill, he's going to be your right tackle. When he'll be your right tackle in 2023, we're not quite sure yet. With that partially torn Achilles, that could impact his availability at the start of the year. We hope not, but we'll find out more about that. But he's your right tackle if healthy. Ezra Cleveland's going to be your left guard. And Ed Ingram, even though he played pretty poorly last year as a rookie, he was a rookie. He is a high draft pick. I think there's a lot of room for improvement from him. I know you like him, and he's going to be given every chance to succeed in 2023. I don't see the Vikings bringing in anybody to compete with him at right guard, really. He's going to be in at right guard.
Here, I wanted to go through each individual player in that group.
Awesome.
First up, we have Christian Darrisaw. As you can see, any player in PFF that scores over a 90, and he has a 90.4 offensive grade, is elite. He was a third best tackle for run blocking, 8th for pass blocking, and 2nd overall on offense. In his 2nd year, that's
not
amazing,
bad,
folks. There's nothing but up. This man is going to end up being the best left tackle in the league. And if he keeps it up and he keeps this growth up, he has a promising career ahead of him. And next on that list, as we talked about, Brian O'Neill. Brian O'Neill isn't half bad either when it comes to offensive tackles. He's 7th overall. So you have the number 2 and the number 7 of all the offensive tackles in the NFL. And he is doing well. He's already on his 2nd contract. We know that. And there's room in that contract to move money around to help us get under the cap, because they did it the right way. Brian O'Neill's coming off that partially torn, thankfully not fully torn, Achilles. We don't know when he'll be ready. They hope to have him ready by the start of the season. We shall see. Remember when Lodeholt went through his torn Achilles, he was never quite the same. This is partially torn, so hopefully the same or better, especially coming through rehab, comes back out. We shall see We don't want to lose either of these two bookends because there's no other team that I'm aware of that has two top 10 bookends on their O-lines. That is a key to success and long-term success, and we all want that long-term success, building that championship quality team that's competing every year for the championship. Now, Ezra's got a pay bump and a fifth-year option. Ezra's the next guy up here. As you can see, Purple Haze, Ezra's not bad either. He's the 8th ranked overall guard, which is sort of surprising. 8th ranked overall guard in the NFL per PFF. His pass blocking grade is meh. I want that to get better.
Pretty bad.
His run blocking grade is good, but that's not bad for a converted tackle. Because when we originally drafted him, we all thought he was going to be a left tackle. Nope, they made him a right guard. Makes perfect sense, right, Zimmer? Anyways. But he's adapted, and he's become better and better every single season. Now, Purple Haze talked about that 5th-year option. Oh, I'm trying to remember if he was a first-round selectee.
He was a second rounder.
Second rounder, so he doesn't get that for 5th year. But there's already talks, it's already leaked, about an extension for Ezra Cleveland. The Vikings want to keep him. They give him an extension that also helps with bringing the cap down for this coming up season. And he gets paid, and he's on the team for the next 4 or 5 years, or however long the extension is. And I think that's a good thing. You have Ezra and you have Christian Darrisaw side by side. I think we're going to see a lot of that, just nailing that left side down. I think it's going to be a beautiful thing. $2 million increase, Purple Haze, could be. When they're talking extension, he's going to be second contract range for a guard. Probably, I'm betting 8 to 10 million or better. So total per APY, we'll see. Your other guard here, my young boy, Ed Ingram, who shows flashes of absolutely brilliance, powers there. But he has some bad habits, oversetting, getting off balance just a bit, not having his hand out, not working, I shouldn't say coming too quickly out. After Garrett Bradbury, I blame for coming too quickly off a block. But he's gotten better, and he got better over time. His pass block rate got a little bit better. It shows here is horrible. That's because he gave up 11 sacks total and 33 hurries, which the hurries isn't bad. His efficiency rate down there in the bottom, which I have in green, is a 95.2. That's low for starting guards. You want it in the 97-ish range is where you want it, or better. But we shall see. But he's not that far off from locking it in. And it's like I've said before, offensive line is one of those long-term developmental projects. It usually takes, on average, 3 to 4 years for an offensive lineman to develop in the NFL, to make that transition and develop and grow and get to where he's good. I think Ed Ingram will be good and a lot better next season, especially with the offseason. Hopefully get with somebody like Booney, who's willing to give him advice for free, coaching, and gets better over the top. Then we get to the guy that is an unrestricted free agent, had his best season of his Vikings career. His first 3 years sucked. This year, he actually looked competent and good, all up to the point he got his back injury. And even though he returned from that back injury, he did not look as good as prior to it. PFF loved him, though. Other than pass blocking, they still have him low on pass blocking.
Well, that's his highest pass blocking rating in the 4 years
that
PFF
he's had.
Has been grading him by far.
Yes. And his run blocking, we always knew was great because he's got speed and can easily get out to the second level, and he's good at doing it. He makes the right decisions. Like I said, I had a little heartburn when he passed off a stunt to Ed Ingram, and Ed Ingram wasn't ready, and I thought it was a little early, but it works. He's an unrestricted free agent. What do we do here, Darren?
What do we do here? Well, here's what I think we're going to do for what that's worth. But Bradbury had a solid year this year. He's really the only question. He's the only question mark on the Vikings starting five. And I think the Vikings. What I've seen is, and this is from PFF again, they're saying that they think Bradbury can get like a 3-year deal worth about just under 19 million. Or roughly $6 million a year in free agency this year. That's where they think he can land. I think that the Vikings are going to look at this. Okay, Bradbury was pretty good last year and solid in the system, in a new system. He responded well to that. Internally, we don't have a young up-and-coming guy to take his place. I don't think the Vikings would be very comfortable. They've got Chris Reed under contract. I don't think they'd be comfortable turning the starting center over to Bradbury. Or Austin Slotman, who actually was Bradbury's backup this year, but was pretty poor in that role until he broke his fibula and then was gone for the rest of the year. So, and Josh Sokol was on the practice squad the whole year. So we don't have anybody internally who could obviously go in place of Bradbury if we were to let him go in free agency. Also, draft wise, we know right now we're only going to have the 5 picks at the moment. So the Vikings don't have a second round pick right now. So we can't at this point turn to the draft and say, look in perhaps the second round or the third round and pick somebody in a plug and play center from the college ranks to replace Bradbury that way, unless we want to go after Schmitz in the first round from the University of Minnesota, the Golden Gopher. But I don't think we're doing that, and I don't think, Dave, I don't think you think that we're going to do that either. But
it doesn't make it doesn't make logical sense on how you build a team and how to use your first round picks for premier players or blue chippers. If a blue chipper is anybody that's going to instantly start and make a difference straight from the get-go, somebody that's expected to be outstanding and future Pro Bowler, etc., that's your blue chippers. Is John Michael Schmitz considered a blue chipper? And most blue chippers go in the top 10. Now, I'm not saying John Michael Schmitz is going in the top 10. Nobody takes a center that high that I'm aware of. But does he qualify for that? And would they take him at 23? Now, we all hope that at that point, if he's available at 23, Kwesi evaluates who's behind him, who might want him, and then trade back and get in front of whatever that is, but gain a pick in the process, if that's their target. I would love having John Michael Schmitz on the team. I think it would be absolutely fantastic. Another great Minnesota local story. And I think the kid can play. I think he could be that day one starter. And a much better replacement for Bradbury. But Bradbury was a first round pick. And I think we reached for him, and it bit us in the butt because he played lousy the first 3 years. Schmidt, from what I've seen and what I'm being told, is not Bradbury. This kid could play in the NFL tomorrow. Without a doubt, he's an older guy, got caught up in that whole COVID and the extra year eligibility stuff, but he's fully developed and he could easily play. Whether we draft him that high, I don't know. I would love to fall back, get some extra picks, and pick him high in the second. That would be my dream scenario. But then, and why you would do it versus, we obviously need defense, right?
Yes.
We need a cornerback. We need to go start rebuilding that defense, no matter what. People have talked about we could use good wide receiver too, somebody to take the top off. Yes, that would make wild sense for the Vikings, right? For that offense. But I could also see if we lock down a center that is the future, that falls into the realm of the great Viking centers we've had since the 70s on through, that could last 10 years, that are at the top of their game, that could be, when you talk about Pro Bowls, well, you kind of always look at the Viking center. He had a great season, right? One of those types, when it comes to building that long-term championship quality, winning caliber of team, you can't pass up on that. To me, you can't, because that then becomes part of that long-term look that puts us in the window, not just in 1 or 2 years, but puts us in the window for 10. And if you get to that point, that's when I pull the trigger on this young man. I think he would be great here. But do I logically think it's going to happen that way? No. I'm sorry, folks. I don't think it's going to happen that way, because I think Kwesi will probably go the other route. Defense, cornerback, offense, wide receiver, something like that. A more premier position that makes a bigger difference game in and game out when it comes to points expected or points, on the opposite side for defense against, than the center. But I think this center, if we get Schmitz, could be that rock that we rely on for the next decade. And I would love to see it, but don't get your hopes up. We're going to talk about it from now until the draft, but sorry, folks.
We are. The things that the Vikings have to make a decision on Bradbury before the draft even happens. And so I think that the Vikings, I think they will want to keep Bradbury, but the price has to be right. And I think that if they could get Bradbury for a 3 or 4 year deal that's worth about $6 million per year, I think that they're going to take that. Now, we don't know how much they want to invest in the offensive line, because they've already paid big for O'Neal. They're going to have to pay big for Darisaw in a year or two. You got Cleveland, who you got to decide if you want to extend him. No offensive line can pay big money to all 5 of its starters. At some point, you have to make a decision, and the decision usually is, well, we want the tackles, and then we'll figure out the rest. So it's pretty clear that unless Darisaw retires because of some injury reason, that he's going to be extended and get a lot of dinero in like a couple of years. But I still feel that the free agent center market is weak. Like Bradbury is probably the top 3rd or 4th best option in that. So, and anybody you sign outside of Bradbury is probably going to cost even more than it would cost to sign Bradbury. So free agency, I don't think is an option for the Vikings. I think they're going to stick with Bradbury because they don't have any in-house guys, cheap guys that they get. Like Reed, I could live with Reed at center.
Had the great pass block, and it's only 124 snaps. You can see I threw up the snaps, total snaps played on offense this season. He had 124, a great pass blocking grade, unlike Bradbury.
Yes.
But the rest of his game is what lacked, and that's why he got such a low score. And like you said, we have Sokol in the practice squad. I'm sure they're going to try to bring him back as developmental, but it's been a while for that. But it's this is a little early.
I think that. Yeah, well, I think that Bradbury, the Vikings are going to bring him back, re-sign him to a deal. Some fans aren't going to be happy with that, and that'll solidify the front 5. Then you've got what you're going to do with your backups, your depth. Well, I think Reed, who you've pictured a couple of times, he's under contract for next year for pretty reasonable, around $2.5 million. He's got versatility. He can play guard. He can play center. So he's a good guy to bring back. Schlotman, not really sure. Obviously, Chris Kuper, the offensive line coach, had coached him, was familiar with him. He was a low-cost guy that they brought in last year, but he didn't play very well when he was the backup. And he's the kind of guy that I think you can get a veteran at a vet minimum like him, 2 or 3 of those guys every year. But because of his familiarity with Cooper, because of the way that Kuper brought him in last year. If the Vikings are confident that his recovery is going well from the fractured leg, and the fact that he's shown that they were comfortable enough with him as a backup center last year. He's a guy who can play guard too. He'd be another guy that I could see them bringing back, but I'm not 100% on that. I wouldn't be disappointed if they didn't re-sign him and they brought in somebody, some other no name that again that you bring in out of the various offensive linemen, journeyman offensive lineman, veteran that you can get for vet minimum. On that end, the one reserve guy I'd like to have back, but I don't think is going to be back, is Oliudo. We saw him. He went in there at right tackle. You've got the grades there. Looked pretty good. Again, small sample size. But I thought through the eye test that when he had to come in for Brian O'Neill at the end of the year, you didn't notice him. And that's a good thing for a tackle. Like, there was he's giving up a ton of pressure.
That's a 79.5. Yeah. The deal is that's going to earn him a starting job somewhere. That's
right.
Because he's an unrestricted free agent. He's going to get a starting job somewhere. Is he going to get really top tackle money? No. Is he going to get good tackle money? Yes. And there's no way that the Vikings can match that. I think in any sort of way, shape, or form. I think he's the perfect backup for Brian O'Neill. He was this season. He found his spot, right tackle. He played it well. He's a hugger. And the fact that how he plays his lineman style is very much the Green Bay way, where you sort of hug and grab around rather than grab it at the chest. But it works. And you can see he was successful at it. And you can see that sack numbers in almost 200 snaps, 0. There's guys with less than 200 snaps that gave up sacks. And you see that efficiency rating. That's a 98.7. Yes, just under 200 snaps is a small sample size. But, folks, that was good play. You've got to I'd love to have him back as backup, especially if Brian O'Neill is slow coming off the mend for that Achilles. It'd be nice to, say he can't play at the beginning of the season. It'd be nice to have Oli in there. But like I said, I don't anticipate it because I expect he will be targeted as a primary offensive tackle free agent available across the league, and there'll be teams looking to get his services.
They will, and Oliudo will be looking for a place where he can play more, because that's not going to happen in Minnesota with O'Neill at right tackle, and even if you had him switch over to left tackle, well, Darrisaw's there. Yep. So he's not going to be back, which is too bad. And the Vikings they drafted kind of a successor to Oliudo and Vidarian Lowe, who didn't get much playing time last year and didn't even dress for a lot of games, but he played basically in the Chicago game, and that was about it at the end of the year. But he was a guy coming out of college, gave up a lot of pressures, but the measurables were great. The length of the arms, the height, 6'6", great character, he's got the right size, everything just needed to be coached up more, was the college scouting report of Vidarian Lowe. And he's had a year to be coached up, and now another year to get coached up. And so I think the Vikings are going to move him into the other backup slot, and take Oliudo's place. And then Blake Brandel stays as a low-cost guy who's been improving every year. He's been with the Vikings, and not fantastic, but I think the Vikings are comfortable with him as a veteran left tackle backup. Right. And he sticks around too. And then the Vikings sign, 2, 3, 4 other offensive linemen in the offseason, the Jesse Davises, the Chris Reed kind of signings, the guys that aren't going to cost you a lot but can compete for a backup job and have some position flexibility.
And here with Blake, I wanted to compare. Take Oli, who was almost 200 snaps and 0 sacks, right? And I think he had like 1 hurry or whatever, versus Blake, who in 275 snaps had 7 sacks given up. And
yes,
13 pressures. There's a night and day. That's why Olu's going to go get himself a starting job somewhere. But I fully understand it. I think it's up to this guy to continue to improve them. And I'm going to say, I do acknowledge that Chris Kuper, our line coach, did help this year. The team did play better. I think scheming was part of it. Kirk more in the shotgun, gave Bradbury more time to set up different things, but I think Cooper did make a positive impact on that offensive line. I look forward to year 2 once, everybody gets that full offseason. They know the pattern. They know, because everybody coming in last year, it was all new. They were trying to figure stuff out. How was the best way to run it? Now we get into year 2. Pardon me. It's all set, and they go into it. And I think you see that next leap forward. Dan is talking about there's some centers in the 3rd and 4th round. Yes, Dan, I agree. There are some competent centers lower in the draft. My question is, are they day 1 professional starters? I think the only one in the draft that falls into that category is Schmitz. That's why. Now, could you get one of them and develop him? Oh, absolutely. The Vikings made great choices in the past of getting 6th and 7th rounders and developing into outstanding centers. It's just, it's harder when you need it right now. That's the difference.
And what I expect, and Dave, I think you expect too, is that Kwesi, just like he did last draft, although he's got less draft capital, but he's going to be wheeling and dealing again this draft. Potentially, we're going to get out of that 23rd spot out of the 1st round altogether and grab a second or an extra 3rd and just get 2 or 3 additional picks. And then at that point, then maybe center is in play in our draft in April. Right now, with a 1st, a 3rd, a 4th, and then a
couple of 5ths,
a 5th or a couple of 5ths, you don't have as much. Like you're looking at, if you're going to draft an offensive lineman or a center, it's probably in the 5th round or something like that at this point, because we've got those needs on defense that you think that they want to address in the draft. And center if it is going to be, not that it isn't high on the list of needs, but I don't think that we can really afford to draft somebody in the 1st round at center at this point, like you were talking about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, logically it doesn't make sense. My heart says, oh, hell yes, take Schmitz.
Yeah.
But logically, I'm going to have to twist in pretzels. If we took Schmitz, I'd be happier than a clam, and you're going to hear about it for weeks. But logically, corner or wide receiver, to me, are basically the only 2 options, unless you get some stud at linebacker. Yes, Merlin, I hear you. Merlin's in the room with me.
Merlin wants a center, too.
Yes, he does, and he's whining about it. I wish he'd come on camera, but he's camera shy. Will the O-line look
whole camera
different in 2023 than it did in 2022?
No, I think we're getting the same starting 5 back. The only question mark to me is O'Neill there in week 1? Luckily, he didn't have the full tear because that would be a much longer recovery for him. Something like like Cam Akers came back with LA when he tore his Achilles 2 years ago, but he didn't come back until late in the year himself. And luckily he came back and looked as good as new. But and so we can only hope that O'Neill is a few months earlier, because it wasn't a full tear on the Achilles. But I'm expecting the starting 5 to look pretty similar. Actually,
that brings us
exactly the same.
Well, I think we may have a new center, but the other 4 are going to be the same, and so we'll find out. That brings us to our next promotion segment at the end of our second theme. We always go with our favorite beer, Lake Monster Brewing. Lake Monster Brewing, located in St. Paul, Minnesota, right across the river from Minneapolis. From the stadium. They make some great beers. They love experimenting. And this week, they did some more. This week, they are debuting the Margarita Goes beer. Goes is a German wheat beer. It is a tart wheat beer right? And in this one, they've used agave nectar, layers of lime zest, some juice puree, and hints of flavor. Goes is very salty for some reason. It's tart and it's salty, which is an interesting combination. I don't remember if I've ever had a German Goes. I had to look it up what a German Goes was and how they make it. It's usually a warm or room temperature fermentation process. They use a warm yeast, and it's a wheat beer, much like a Hefeweizen. Only it's different in the fact that how the yeast interacts with it and the temperature it does. And it's called Goes. I think that's how you pronounce it. It's a weird O and then a O with some weird symbol above it. ZE is how it's pronounced. So I said Goes. And it looks very, very interesting. I generally like tart beers in the summer when I'm hot or sweaty, right? Something to cool me off. But it is available now. They made it. It's the first time they've ever made it. And they liken it to a margarita beer. I love margaritas. Grew up in New Mexico. I love me some good margaritas, right? Get a margarita, made it with a beer, and you get Margarita Goes. So it's an interesting beer. If you're up there, if you can make it to the brewery, I would check it out because to me it sounds fascinating. On tap, everything's basically the same. The Margarita Goes is the brand new one. Coconut Stout was the new one a couple weeks ago. You have your sours, your hot apple ale because it's still cold. People are ice fishing. Perfect after coming off the lake for ice fishing. And you go on down to the regulars below the depth chart. God, I love the depth chart. Gave one to my head maintenance guy, Manny, and he fell in love with that sucker. He would love to get with Lake Monster Brewing and get some more of that because he thought it was outstanding. I agree with him. It is outstanding. It brings us to theme 3. What's Adam Thielen's future? I hear your dog.
Yes.
First we hear Merlin,
Somebody
now
came
we
to the
hear
front
yours.
door. Came to the front door. Somebody came to the front door. I don't know who it is. Anyway, Adam Thielen. Yeah, well, this is kind of. We'll also get into Adam when we do our wide receiver positional analysts in a week or two, but couldn't miss out on this because Thielen was at the Super Bowl, has been at the Super Bowl this week, and he's been getting interviewed by various people at the Super Bowl. And so he got talking about his contract status and said that, of course, Thielen's one of those guys we've talked about before, one of the many Viking veterans with high salaries and cap hits, and the Vikings have got to make a decision on a lot of these guys, who they're going to keep, who they're going to restructure, who they're going to let go. And so Thielen said, hey, my agent and the Vikings are working on contract stuff right now, which is I guess good news because again, like I said, Thielen's been a great player for us. Great story.
The story.
Yeah.
And
The
how
story.
he's loved by the fans and he loves Minnesota and he gives so much back to it. He's a fantastic, guaranteed Ring of Honor player somewhere down the line, or at least
For sure. And a lot of Vikings fans have a strong attachment to Adam Thielen because of the fact that he's a Minnesota boy, his whole story going on with it, and so yes, there's an emotional attachment for some, but the fact is that Adam Thielen's got a humongous cap hit that this coming year, just about almost 20 million in 2023, and then in 2024 it jumps up even more. He'd be 21.6 million cap hit. Those are large cap hits for a guy who caught 70 passes last year for just over 700 yards and had 6 TDs. Now, so the Vikings got to make a decision here. Thielen knows it, and he said, "I'm open to staying in Minnesota. I'm open to restructuring the contract." But he also said in those interviews that he still feels that he feels great. He can play at a high level. And so his view on things is that he's still the player he was maybe in 2017 or 2018. I do not agree with that.
We didn't
And
see it. Now,
yeah,
watching the All-22, there was tons of times he was open, and Kirk
yes,
just didn't throw it that direction. But there was other times where we saw Kirk may have thrown his way, and he wasn't quite open. He didn't have that. He didn't have that step he usually had before. He didn't have the move. I got frustrated that he kept running sideways once he caught the ball instead of turning around and going upfield. Yes, Merlin, you're right here. Get a little closer. You get on the camera. Uh-huh. Let's see if I can bring him into the picture so folks can see.
Merlin. Are we going to get to see
Merlin,
the
a
big
great
guy?
day.
There we go.
There he is. He's
Gorgeous.
shy.
What a gorgeous dog.
He's camera shy.
Hi, Merlin. Hi, Merlin.
But that's Merlin, folks. He's a young Great Dane, and he's a butthead most of the time, but I love him. He's a good boy. He's not worth what we're wanting to pay him, and that's where the problem is. Now, even with a restructure, say they get him to where he needs to be. Purple Haze, yeah, you're right. That cap hit's not going to work whatsoever. Say he does restructure. Say it gets down to $8 million, which I would think was relatively reasonable, ballpark, 7-8 million. And he agrees to that. Is he your wide receiver too?
Not from what I'm seeing, Dave. And the problem, I think, is that I don't think KJ Osborne is wide receiver number 2 either. I think KJ Osborne is as good as the number 3 guy, and we've talked about him. But like Thielen at this stage in his career, 33. Again, I didn't like you. I didn't see him. It didn't seem like it's been 35 games since he's had 100-yard receiving game in receiving yards. Now, part of that because Justin Jefferson is completely taken over, and Cousins is throwing the ball a lot to Justin Jefferson and not targeting Thielen as much when Thielen is open. Sure. But I think that when you look at some of the plays where Thielen either caught the ball last year in particular, or where there were passes broken up, cornerbacks are sticking to him. They're a lot closer to him than they seem to have been in previous years. So I don't think he's a wide receiver number 2. Even at a restructure,
Berlin wants out.
Now he's So at this point, I think that I'm of the view that even if he got restructured, I don't really feel that I want to see Thielen back. I think we need to find another guy who can take his spot on the Vikings and make our offense. If we want the defense, and we talked about it, the defense needs to get younger, faster, and to get better. Well, there's spots on the Vikings offense where that also has to happen. And I think Thielen's position as the wide receiver number 2 is one of those main spots. Now, again, the Vikings have a difficult decision here because there's nobody on our roster, again, who can, I think, can obviously slot in there. And we can say they'll be good as a wide receiver number 2 and perform as well as Thielen has done in that position the past couple of years. Again, KJ Osborne's not a pretty good number 3, but I don't know if he could become the number 2 guy. Jalen Naylor showed some nice things in a couple of late games last year, but I'd have to see a lot more from him in the preseason to feel comfortable that he could come in and be a key part of the offense, Vikings offense in 2023, with a whole bunch of, maybe the Thielen's allotment of snaps. Draft wise, you can draft a wide receiver, but again, we've only got 5 picks right now. We got a lot of needs on defense. Are we going to dip into the wide receiver pool early to get a guy who can come in and be wide receiver number 2? It's hard to say. So a lot of difficult spots.
Jalen Reagor.
No, it is not Jalen Reagor. And free agency, sure. We haven't, but at that point, again, free agency is, we say it, I've said it in many times in the past, you'll overpay in free agency. You're going to,
especially
the guy you get. Yeah, the guy you're going to get is not going to outperform his contract most of the time, particularly the guys in the number 2 tier. So the only name that I've really heard as being a potential guy that the Vikings should target, this was Pro Football Focus. They mentioned DJ Chark from the Lions
Mm-hmm.
as a guy. I don't know if the Vikings like him or not. He did have two pretty solid games against the Vikings this year, and he didn't have a strong year last year with the Lions as far as getting a ton of catches. So he would be pretty affordable on the free agent market, I think. But are the Vikings interested in him? Is he interested in the Vikings? If they bring Thielen back,
The
maybe
problem I
they
have with
don't.
DJ Shark is I think the Baby Shark song every time I hear his name. And I've heard way too much of that song playing Rent a Grandpa. And but I will do it. I will do it if he comes to the Vikings and he excels. We can sing Shark,
But
Shark,
it's
Shark all day long.
yeah, I think that with Thielen, like a lot of these vets, it's a tough decision because of the salary cap, the performance on the field, and the fact that on our roster we don't really have somebody who can step in, a young and up and comer that we can have confidence in them coming in and taking over for Thielen. So another a hard decision with Thielen. There's no the options that the Vikings have pros and cons. There's no slam dunk option in any case, but my preference would be move on because you keep restructuring. Eventually, you're going to face that cap hit at some point in time later
Mm-hmm.
down the road. And later down the road, the position the Vikings might be in salary cap wise might not be any more favorable than it is now. So
They're
prepare for the
working on
future
it.
now.
There's ways to work on
Yeah.
it where they're actually better this year than they were in previous years because of the way they can move money around and have the space to do it. That we appreciate. A big sticking point of that is obviously our quarterback. We'll see what goes there, but they're better. Even though they're over this year, it's going to be relatively easy to get under and create some space to get some free agents. The quality
Yes.
one, maybe not, but they're better this year than they were last year. And hopefully they get
I
even
just
better and better over time. And that's Quasi's job, so that we
yes.
can pick anybody we want after that to stay in that long term championship quality competitive window. Keep it open for a decade.
Indeed, yes, but
But this man's got to clean it up.
he does, and I know that he won't. There will be no emotion played into the decision on Thielen. Again, there's a lot of emotional reasons where you could say, "Oh man, you got to keep Thielen because of this, that, and the Mankato
Mm-hmm.
thing, and being from Minnesota and being a Viking fan all his life and wanting to retire a Viking and all that stuff." But none of that can really enter into your business decision whether you want to keep Thielen or whether you want to restructure him. You've got to base it on, can he make, if with Adam Thielen on the team at whatever the price tag is going to be, is that the best option for the Vikings offense, for the Vikings team in 2023? And I've got the feeling that my view is that it isn't the best option to keep him here, and that we need to start again, give it to a younger, faster, better option at this point. As much as it pains me to say that, because I like Thielen, I love Thielen and what he's accomplished just as much as every other Vikings fan has.
Davey, if you just jinxed Darren, I'm going to hunt you down. But yes, his Wi-Fi's been good. I picked this as the last Thielen pick, the peace out. I see him as now a wide receiver 3 and a great mentor in the locker room. He's a possession guy. His hands are still brilliant. He can
Yep.
get sideline catches inside the 10. He just doesn't take off the top of the defense like we need somebody to do. I think he could very well be a component. I just don't see him paying him more than like $8 million as being reasonable, and even that's high. And we
Very,
know his
very high, I think.
salary. We know his salary right now is just stupid high, and that part of that was how they structured it. Of course, part of that is they're keeping players they love too long. Should be interesting to see. that brings us to the very end of the show. We have a Super Bowl tomorrow.
We do.
Who's your pick?
Unfortunately, I like the Eagles. I think they're going to win. I think they got the better overall team, and they've got the defense. Their offense is strong enough to score enough points to outscore Mahomes, and their defense is strong enough to limit Mahomes and that offense from going crazy 35 points or more that they're going to need to win that game. So I like the Eagles, and unfortunately, I don't want to. I don't.
I'm
Yeah.
rooting for the Chiefs. I can't
Me too.
stand the Eagles. They irritate me, so I'm rooting for the Chiefs tomorrow. We'll go from there. Freddie, yes, I do think Irv Smith is a goner. As much as Darren may be disappointed about that, being that he was his comeback player for like 3 years in a row, I think he's gone.
He is gone too. I agree.
Purple and gold for days, yeah. I think even 8's too high. I don't think he's going to settle for less. And I think there's some other team that may pay him that. So I think AT will probably be on a different team. Hopefully it's not spiteful and like Green Bay and Aaron Rodgers decides to come back because he likes him. Once he gets out of his seclusion in the dark for 10 days or whatever weird stuff he's doing. Reminds me of Altered States, the movie. And if you haven't seen it, it's classic. Very, very good. Where scientists experiments with sensory deprivation, tubes, containers, and taking peyote at the same time. It is a very, very interesting movie. Like I said, Super Bowl's tomorrow. I hope for a very, very good game, competitive game. We all want to see that. We don't want to see a blowout either way.
Nope.
I want to see good commercials. I like funny commercials. I want to see good funny commercials. I don't want to see political bullshit. I don't want to see fucking, get your Bitcoin stuff by scanning this barcode. I want good funny commercials. And a lot of companies put into that. So I hope to see that. And I hope the halftime show's good. I like Rihanna. I think hopefully she does a good job. Nobody will ever beat Prince. Nobody. But I hope for all those, and it's an enjoyable game across the show, from top to bottom, that you're with good friends and good people and enjoying yourself as you watch it, eating some good food, even if it's wings and little piggies in a blanket or pizza or whatever it is. I hope everybody out there watching has a great time tomorrow because it is the ultimate in sport. NFL owns everything. And trans commercials. Unfortunately, you're probably right, G-Mac. Puppy Bowl, yeah. Davey's favorite part of it, the Puppy Bowl. And Purple Haze, unfortunately, is rooting for the NFC. Hey, as I told a friend here, Manny, the maintenance superintendent here, he asked me, Dave, who are you rooting for? I said, I'm rooting for the meteorite. But I especially don't like the Eagles. And for those that are offended by that, sorry, too bad. It's not my Vikings. So, anyways, that's it. Now, I do have a question for the viewers. Before we go, Darren and I were debating before the show. Do you like the 2 o'clock on Saturday time slot, or do you prefer the 4 o'clock on Saturday time slot, Central Time? What is best for you? Please put that in the remarks. That'll help us schedule better as we go forward, especially through the off season. What's the best watch time for you? Because we're going to get into some non-football viewing time because, of course, after the Super Bowl, we roll into free agency.
8 months of nothing.
Yeah, the combine and all that. So do you prefer 2 p.m. on Saturday or 4 p.m. on Saturday? Please let us know. I will look at the remarks after this, and we will judge from that. We love you all. Great that you join us every week. Makes us happy as all gets out, fills our heart that we have folks out there that like what we do and love our football team, the Minnesota Vikings. Any last words there, Darren?
Jared Allen will be in the Hall of Fame next year. That's my last words.
I hope so. Damn, I hope so.
Book it. Book it now.
Book it now. Their last words, we'll keep that. I'll clip that for when that announcement is made. Thanks, everybody. We're going to call it a day. You enjoy your weekend and enjoy the Super Bowl tomorrow. And what do we say, Darren?
We say, Skol Vikings!
Skol Vikings! Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, and ring the bell, and rate us on your favorite aggregator. And a special shout out goes to our partners, the Daily Norseman, where the best Vikings content can be found, and to Lake Monster Brewing, home of the best beer in Minnesota. Skol, everybody.